All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Hazley. Resident of Ward 3. I'd like to welcome you to the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly. Thank you for coming out tonight. You guys have a choice on how you want to.
Oh, echo.
Sorry, my
We have a sign-in sheet going around, just FYI.
This is yours.
See that just seems.
sorry, I'm just trying to remember this.
Just try to get started on time for a change, and I get punished by the technical gods.
If anyone actually lives in Ward 3 and has not received a paper bracelet yet, let us know.
There is a sign-in sheet coming around as well, as long as the agendas. So we'll have those.
And of course, help yourself to pizza and drinks.
Y'all are fine to start. I just am restarting my computer, but you don't include it. So.
All right. Yeah, so I was saying, welcome to the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly. I appreciate you coming out tonight. There are plenty of other things you could have done on your Wednesday evening, but you chose to be here, and for that, we're very grateful. My name is Chris Hazley. I live on College Street. I'm on the Neighborhood Planning Assembly Steering Committee.
Michelle Borbas, another member of the steering committee.
Nora Aarons, North Union Street, she, her pronouns, Ward 3 steering committee member.
Zachary Cummings, Clark Street resident, steering committee member.
Charlie Messing, College and Pine, unit committee member.
Right.
Darrell Fields, Lower Church Street, NPA steering committee member.
So for those of you who are not familiar, the NPAs were established in the early 1980s as a way to facilitate communication between city residents and local government, namely our elected officials, through regular monthly meetings where folks could have an opportunity to kind of come together and talk about things that are on their mind and things that are going on in their neighborhoods. We did just send out some agendas. On the back of the agenda are some of the ground rules for today's meeting. I just wanted to review those, kind of hit on some of the main points. When we get into the recognition part, please wait to be recognized before speaking. Listen to others, make an effort to be open-minded to other members of the group. Please respect the agenda and the process and try to remain focused on the issue at hand. Please share your opinion respectfully. Speak out, but not over others. And treat people how you would like to be treated and be respectful of everyone, including guests. I'd also like to make an announcement on behalf of Representative Kate Logan. She wanted me to let everyone know that they will be hosting an event at 10:30 a.m. at the Sustainability Academy this coming Saturday, along with a number of other legislators and senators to provide an update on the work of the legislature, more specifically around the issue of education. That's been a big topic this year, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. So if you're interested in education and what's being done at the state level, head on over to the Sustainability Academy at 10:30 on Saturday morning. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize the service of Nora here, who will be moving over to Ward 2 at the end of the month. So we'll be losing Nora, but it'll be Ward 2's gain. Very grateful for Nora's service. I learned a lot working with her, and appreciate what she has done to keep the ship on track. So just wanted to call that out as well. Hello, hello.
Hello.
All right. So without further ado, we'll roll into public forum. If you want to speak at public forum, there's a sign-up sheet going around. We do have time-limited public forum. We do have 10 minutes, and we do think have pretty close to that. So had a few people sign up. I'm going to call them in the order in which they sign up. If you would kindly come up to the table here and share your comments, we'll go there as well. So First on the list is Jill Lesh from College Street, who will be speaking on the topic of graffiti. Jill, thank you.
Hi there.
Hello.
Most of you, complaining about the graffiti downtown. And they can't hear at all. Yeah, doesn't.
Okay, these are not gonna amplify.
Oh.
So you need to speak to that guy sitting at.
Okay,
furthest person away.
all right.
That's for
Sorry.
the recording.
Okay, Jill Lesh. I'm concerned about the graffiti in the downtown, like probably most of you are. And I'm hoping that we can get some efforts to clean it up and to make penalties for people who do the graffiti. I'm interested in working with anyone. My name is Jill Lesh and my email is jilllesh@me.com. Let me know if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next up, we have Ali Sheehan, who wants to speak about the Overdose Prevention Center. I don't know if Ali is here in person, maybe online. Do we have anyone online?
No.
All right. Okay, seeing that Ali's not here, we'll move on to the next person. This will be Brooks Cummings from the steering committee. It's going to talk about vandalism of personal property.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Get my timer on. I get 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, my name is Brooks Cummings. I live on Cherry Street. Recently, I spoke a couple of months ago about our condo garage was broken into. We inadvertently scared the guy out. He came in around the door that, it's a gate and people come in, scoot in. They destroyed like five storage units. We kind of inadvertently scared him out. He returned the next day, cut his way through some grating on the window and went in and destroyed another 10 garage storage units. I got to say, the police department acted phenomenally, right? We called that Friday, got a dispatcher or somebody at the front desk. They replied. We had a corporal reply back. We had a couple of eyewitnesses. They had taken film or pictures throughout the city, gave us a picture of the guy with my bike and the neighbor's suitcase. And we're like, that's the guy, right? So that he's a well-known perpetrator. I don't know what whatever we're calling him. I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but unfortunately, we never heard back whether he was I'm sure he was ticketed, but convicted or any kind of personal actions or purposeful actions were taken. A couple of days later, I was at City Market with a good friend of mine that is in charge or runs the kind of bike recovery Facebook team. And here the perp and his girlfriend were walking across South Winooski, and I asked her, should I confront him? Because we had, if you go back 2 months, I was talking about vigilantism in the city, and I have my mace in my thing here, and getting community together to actually just go and stand and watch on Center Street or wherever the hotspot is, and just stare at them and make them uncomfortable, right? And I was cautioned that may be that may be an issue for my health, so I haven't done that yet. But it's unfortunate. The perception out there is that we are doing catch and release, right? And interestingly enough, 2 days ago, there's a local internet content provider. His name is Johnny Wanzer. If you're familiar with him, he put out a 2-hour. He's now doing about once a year a significant kind of investigative video. So he put out a 2-hour one on the judicial process in Vermont. Everything from the police giving citations to the court hearings, the multiple court hearings, and the legality of how long you can hold them, and bonds or no bonds and everything. It was very enlightening to me, right? Everything. And it was called the trial of Sarah George, because everybody feels Sarah George is the evil person in our district's attorney, not district attorney, but Chittenden County judicial system. And I found it very informative in that I think she's doing good work. My respect for her went up incrementally. But it was now my focus is not on poor social media communications, fake facts, that kind of stuff. But if we really want to have people And I use incarceration, that's probably not. But if we really want to have actions faster, there are a couple things in my view that need to happen. We need to change the state logistics of all the rules that prosecutors and police and everything go by. And they're completely underwater as far as they're like 2,670 open cases, I think I heard from the Public Safety Committee, and they're underwater. So anyways, I just wanted to share with you that Sarah is not the evil victim or evil villain that we all think she is. And everybody that I could see in our judiciary was doing the best they could. They're following the rules. They have very little degrees of freedom. So it isn't like it's just a wild, wild west. It's like, this is how we have put legislation in place in Vermont to treat folks that are offending laws. So I probably went over my 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Next up, we have Tyler Nettleton, manager of Nectar's, going to talk to us about the downtown construction and some others.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tyler. I'm the general manager for Nectar's in downtown Burlington. This year is our 50th anniversary. 1975 to 2025. I cannot say that I've been alive that long, but I'm thankfully in the position to be the one kind of leading the celebration. If you've gone outside of this building, you can see there's not much of a celebratory kind of cause. And I'm not really here to talk about Nectar's. I'm here to talk about every other business, and including my own, that's suffering because of lack of foot traffic, construction, everything under the sun that's been afflicting our city for a while now. Realistically, there have been two restaurants or two businesses on our block of Main Street, that first block there, that put out SOS calls on social media this week alone, Muddy Waters and Honey Road. Don't want to necessarily say that they were direct SOS, but there are people saying that they would love to see more people coming through the doors and spending money and engaging with the locally owned businesses downtown. We're no different. I would love to be able to say that Nectar's is going to be alive for another 50 years, and God willing, it will be. That being said, obviously something needs to change, and I really hope that some further communication on what downtown looks like, our new police chief and some changes that he might be putting into place. And then just kind of hoping that city officials hear the business owners and hear the people who are on the ground dealing with problems that we can all talk about thousands of times on the internet, but dealing with it in person every single day, and kind of move forward from there. There's a lot that we could be doing to make sure that downtown is as vibrant as it was when I moved here in 2015, but I haven't seen much of that yet. So I really hope that we can all kind of push in the right direction here.
Thank you. I think next up we have Rob Perry, who is from Shelburne.
Pardon?
Shelburne, you 54 Clark Street?
Well, we own 54 Clark Street, but my partner Amy and I live in the Mad River Valley. So, but I'm here as the owner. My name is Robert Perry. My partner and I own 54 Clark Street, which is nearly directly across the street from the Howard Center Safe Recovery Center. I'm here because the Safe Recovery Center essentially operates today as a de facto injection site. The center, we house in our building a duplex, 5 young people who have jobs, who work, who pay rent, and just want a nice, peaceful life. They do not have that right now because the Safe Recovery Center is a drug magnet. Every day there are drug dealers on the street. There are drug abusers hanging out, loitering at the Clark Street property of the Howard Center. The Howard Center does nothing to address this. They talk about things, nothing is actually done. And it's a disaster. And I'm here mostly to say that downtown can't absorb another drug magnet, which is why the Overdose Prevention Center needs to be somewhere else. It should not be in downtown because downtown has enough drug abuse problems without another magnet here to bring more drug abusers into the city. The Howard Center can't manage their program. I don't know how anybody else is going to manage another program. The police, and we will have some questions later, seem to do nothing. When they come, they talk to people and then they leave. The Howard Center looks at the people hanging out, shooting up. They do shoot up on the Howard Center property. There are overdoses there quite frequently, and it's just a disaster. And we want the center to move off Clark Street. I don't care where it moves, but it needs to move off Clark Street. It should not be in a residential neighborhood. And, we've been talking with the Howard Center. They keep telling us, no, we are not moving. And the program is just out of control. And that's why I'm here to say something needs to happen because we've been working on this for over a year with the Howard Center, and there's been no concrete action taken. And it's a disaster. The other night, there was mayhem, people breaking glass.
Thank you. That is
Until 9 o'clock
right
at
around
night, they were there, at least. And it happens on weekends. It happens all the time. And it needs to change. And that's why I'm here. And there should not be another drug magnet here in downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. So I'm looking around the room and seeing some folks. It looks like they may want to speak at public forum here. We do have reached the end of the public forum. We do have another agenda item. I'm kind of feeling like maybe we should postpone that to another time so that we can extend the public forum. Is folks good with that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll entertain a motion.
seconded.
So move. So we're gonna, all in favor of postponing the discussion on the bylaw so we can extend public forum and just show hands. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, if you want to speak at public forum, please sign up. I think I saw a gentleman in the back there that wanted to speak.
Where's the binder?
Where did we sign up?
There's sheets going around.
I don't think you actually sent them, Chris.
Pardon?
Apologies, confusion. There is a sign-in, just a general attendance sign
my bad.
sheet going around. If you want to speak as part of public forum, those are going around now. But yes, just quick check-in. Please do sign in to showing that you attended tonight. If you live in Ward 3 and are here, please come grab a bracelet if you have not already, regardless of whether you plan on speaking or not. If you live in Ward 3. Okay. You ready, Chris?
Yes. All right. Sorry about that. Our logistical skills are in need of improvement, apparently. Thank you. All right.
Do you need two more?
I'm wondering what those are for. Yes.
For the after party. All right.
All set.
Mr. Felker, and you'll be speaking on.
The proposed safe injection facility in Burlington. My name is Christopher Aaron Felker.
Chris.
Yep. We've met before, man.
Yeah. Oh, Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, we're trying.
We're going. We got time going. Okay, so we've discussed this subject pretty frequently. My opinion has not changed. The proposed safe injection facility is going to be limited in its impact on the number of people that actually can use it. They have approximately a 7-block radius of efficacy. Outside of that, you have no reduction in mortality. Our hot zones are down here in downtown Burlington, but we can't, like others have mentioned, we can't afford to bring more drug magnets downtown. It's not just the addicts that come, it's the drug dealers and their entourage. It's clear as day to anybody what these elements are doing downtown. They show up 6 o'clock in the morning up on Cherry Street with their pushing their drugs. They're the only ones that are up at 6 o'clock in the morning. No longer do we have paper boys. We've got drug dealers and pimps and whores that are out in town. That's it. You can see it right outside the door. I don't even want to come here anymore. I had to park down on South Church Street, walk past 3 junkies that were sitting there on the sidewalks trying to finagle their way to get more.
Seconds.
We can't have this downtown. I encourage people, you aren't going to get much support at the municipal level. Document it and send it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The only way that this is going to stop is by going through federal law. So thank you.
Okay. Lee Morgan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Morgan. I live here tonight in support of an overdose prevention center and speak in opposition to the resolution on the agenda tonight. I have more points for when we dig into the resolution and discuss that. But what I'll briefly say is it's important to remember that we don't currently have an overdose prevention center. The dealers and the users are downtown. The pimps and the sex workers, they're downtown. They're already there. So clearly what we're doing is not working. People talk about the syringe exchange and the Elmwood Pods being a drug magnet. Part of that is they don't allow drug use there. So they don't. So can you folks not interrupt me? Because I didn't interrupt you. I just, as a neighbor, I'd appreciate that. If I could have like 10 more seconds. So, you know, it's important to remember that when people go to utilize these services, they're not allowed to use inside. They will use outside. We have a business that is going to allow safe use inside. So to compare the outcomes of places that do not allow use inside to a place that will, we're going to have different outcomes. And like I said, I'll share more during the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. We're going to hear from the gentleman in the back and then Councilor Grant, and then I think we'll probably be hitting time. Anyone else want to speak, just so I can kind of get a sense? Because I do want to get started right at 7 with Chief Burke.
How much time do I have?
2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Frank Von Turkovich. I'm here to speak for my family that owns a property on Clark Street and the tenants in our building. And I have to tell everyone here tonight, the needle distribution facility that Howard Center runs is chaos. It is terrible. It is a scourge. And if you let anything like that into your neighborhood anywhere in Burlington, you are out of your minds. It is awful. And the police come in and they'll show up occasionally and try to intervene in whatever's going on. They leave. Nothing happens. People come out of that building, they go across the street, they get into cars, they make drug deals, they inject themselves on our property, they inject themselves on the street, they fall over, they get resuscitated by the ambulances that show up. It is 24-hour chaos because people believe they can go to that building and it is a safe place for them. I have nothing against a needle distribution operation, but 20,000 needles a month coming out of that building on our street is destroying our neighborhood. And the city has to do something. Or if it's okay to be in our neighborhood, then it should be in everyone's neighborhood. And this facility should be moved into every single neighborhood, every single ward of the city, and let people experience what we're going through. The needle distribution should be in this building. If it's good enough for our neighborhood, it's good enough for City Hall. It is appalling that we are letting something as destructive and horrible as that continue to operate in our community. I can't believe that the Howard Center is doing this, but they are. Am I done?
You've got 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Well, thank you. Broad daylight, people injecting themselves with hypodermic syringes on the Howard Center property, on their property, outside of their front door, in their necks, and falling over and needing to be resuscitated. I want to use the word crazy, but I'm talking about the Howard Center, so I don't want to say that word, but it's an abomination. And please do not let this happen in your neighborhoods. Seriously, don't let it happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And then we have Councilor Grant, and might have time for one more after that. Okay.
Thank you. As many of you know, I am the counselor for District Wards 2 and 3. I also served on the police commission before becoming a city councilor. And when I was on the police commission, I was the only representative for Wards 2 or 3. Currently on the police commission, there is no central district representation. That's a huge problem. Now, I will say, going back to when I was a police commissioner, was begging for help. This was going on deep within Wards 2 and 3 in the Old North End, and it moved. It moved, and yes, now it's hit downtown, it's hit the waterfront, and it's hit other parts of the city. We begged for help repeatedly. We have new leadership now. We were able to report a drug house and have an arrest within a week. That is not something we saw under former leadership. Is there more work to be done? Yes. What I'm concerned about is we have the Howard Center has operated there for a very long time. It is this crisis that has been further, fentanyl is something very, very different. Now, clearly, with the pictures that were sent to me earlier this week, there is a problem. I went by there this morning. They've done a cleanup, but I am reaching out to the mayor's office and I'm initiating conversations with the Howard Center. What was said earlier is correct. They cannot allow
30 seconds.
They cannot allow use in that building. There are many other services in the central district. We cannot change that. Those were past city decisions to allow that, but they cannot allow use in their building. We have record numbers of people living on the street, many of whom suffer from substance use disorder. They have no place to go. They have no place to go, and resources are just not there. This is another tool in the toolbox. Thank you.
I did see a couple hands. Somebody else.
For public forum.
Okay. I think you get the last 2 minutes before.
I'm Nancy Kirby. I'm actually from Ward 1, but I have 50 years of being downtown as a business. I signed the wrong paper. I signed the paper for our presence here, so thanks for letting me speak. I'm a little nervous about having an injection site downtown because I sort of feel we already have one. It's the marketplace. It's Cherry Street. It's Bank Street. It's pretty much everywhere. In my backyard of where I work, every morning I'm picking up needles, human feces, or asking somebody to move along politely. And generally speaking, they're polite back to me, or they call me something that's not pleasant. But we all have to stick together for this. This is not just the Howard Center's problem. It's all of our problems. And we have to do something sooner, because if we keep on doing these meetings and talking about it, it's going to take over. And I'm worried because actually walking downtown tonight, I did see more people at restaurants. But if you walk downtown, sometimes there's more, excuse the expression, abnormal people than normal people spending money. And my customers call ahead to ask what the atmosphere is like. And I really think something has to be done. And another note I want to say is this whole broken window thing. On a regular occasion, people are riding their bikes, skateboarding, smoking pot, cigarettes in open containers on the marketplace. And if we're going to start somewhere, let's start with the small rules and hit the big ones at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're 6:59, so I think we're going to move into the Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Burlington Police Chief Sean Burke. Chief, you want to come up here and grab a seat to my left? Get the microphone turned over to you. Just want to, while the chief is moving over here, I just want to kind of talk about the ground rules for the Q&A. If you could, when you know, raise your hand and you recognize, just state your full name prior to asking your question. You know, full name and where you live. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to ask your question, and we're doing that because we want to try to maximize the number of people who get to participate. No follow-up questions. And again, that's because we want people to be able to participate. So we're trying to limit the back and forth here. And we're going to be prioritizing Ward 3 residents, followed by people who actually work in the downtown. So I think we've got an hour, and I think we should be able to.
Final call, anyone who lives in Ward 3 and does not have a bracelet.
So we can just see a show of hands, or who wants to go, or Lee.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to come to the table, sure, and just state your name and question. And
It's nice to meet you, Chief. I'm happy this was put on tonight. So my name is Lee. I live in Ward 3. And my question is kind of a easy two-parter for you. One, did you read the responses to the BPOA job experience survey that was put out? I think VT Digger did an article on it. So that's my first is, did you read those responses? Two, they really highlighted burnout due to improper leadership. Do you have plans to address that? And the second most common issue that was brought up was sleep deprivation. So looking forward to hearing any plans you have to address those common problems. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you hear me all right? Usually I don't need a microphone. So yes, I've read the survey. Two, I lived a little bit of those same things. I was a Burlington police officer from 1997 to 2018. I served in every role in the police department before retiring at the time in 2018 as the deputy chief of operations. Then I went over to South Burlington where I served as the police chief. When I came into the organization, clearly there was a great deal of confidence from within. About half the sworn force that exists today I served with, and about a third of our professional staff as well. And, I think that anytime a legacy leader comes back into an organization who has always been known for being very predictable, you get like almost an immediate stability, if you will. I will say that, a lot was built within the confines of the Burlington Police Department post 2020. So a lot of the role clarity hasn't been completely rolled out in a way that we've operationalized these new resources. And I think the data that was being used is less clear in my mind to determine the efficacy of those resources. So again, this not to make excuses. I think this is day 38 on the job business day. That data work is being done now by the city data team. I'm not an economics major or an economist by any stretch of the imagination. So we definitely have to drill in on those points, really tell our folks clearly what we need them to do in any given role, and then empower them to do so. I think another thing that led to a lot of confusion within the organization and certainly within the community was our posture with the priority response plan. There's a lot of nuance to a reported incident. So just to take our incident types from our records management system and kind of rank them in a batting order isn't really effective. We have an officer in charge at all times, whether it's a sergeant or lieutenant. Those folks need to evaluate the information that's coming into the dispatch center on any given call and allocate resources in the moment. So we're going through an iterative process of trying to get out, again, clear and concise direction to our staff in order to improve public service or public safety delivery service in the community. And I had hoped to have that work done by this week, because this is the week, just by virtue of how our uniform schedule is set up. They change 3 times a year, essentially. It would have been a great time for a hard reset. I didn't get it done, but I promise you that it will be done by the end of the month. And it should be a lot easier to at least interface with the police department. Basic steps that we've already undertaken. The administration has prepared kind of a matrix of who to call for what service problem. And there's a link from the landing page on the police department webpage right now that you can click to. And as well as we're working on the phone tree. I found it problematic that in our greeting that it says if you've reached this number and you have an emergency, hang up and call 911. We're going to change that so you can hit one key and get our dispatcher and report your emergency so we can attend to it. So and employee wellness, that was a focus when I was chatting with the mayor about the prospect of coming back here to serve as the interim police chief. And we're definitely looking, we have an array of employee wellness initiatives that we invest in our staff to make sure that they're accessible. But, anytime that you're running a police department, there's 2 things that a police department has to do. You have to have dispatchers to take calls, and you have to have uniformed cops to go to those calls. And everything is kind of been engineered at the expense of our available officers to send those calls. And we need to really kind of be really more strategic and thoughtful about silly things that we do, like annual training. We can't take your whole patrol, shift and send them to training and then hope that you're going to fill it on overtime. It's kind of a goofy example, but it was something that happened this week. So again, just paying a little more attention operationally to, what our real critical mission set is for the community, I think we can improve our service delivery. But we are still, I don't want to harp on this, but we've got 63 officers. That includes our recruit sitting at the Vermont Police Academy and me sitting here before you tonight. That's really the scope of our sworn folks, and that's simply not enough to get the work done. But we're also in a place, and this is across the country, not a lot of people coming into policing right now. So application numbers, although they're slightly up right now, they're historically really, really low. And the quality of the applicants isn't quite the same. And that's across the board. We face the same thing in South Burlington that we're seeing here today. And the last thing you want to do is to hire for a number as opposed to hire for the skill set you need. And I tell folks all the time, and I've said this for years, I probably got it from a former Burlington police chief, I'd rather manage a vacancy than a problem. But that does very little when I've learned a lot about a few different hotspots in the community. And, many of those that we're going to talk about here tonight, it does very, very little in terms of available resources to address even the low-lying stuff that can avert some of the bigger problems that we see.
Thank you, Chief. Brooks.
Real quick one. So I've noticed that the use of force videos are like 4 or 5 months old. I personally really enjoy, well, I've got little or nothing better to do, but I enjoy watching those videos, and I'm always amazed at the professionalism and the compassion that the officers display during very contentious situations. But I'm wondering if that program is, the pumping of the videos out is going to continue.
Certainly. So that is work that is typically assigned to the deputy chief of operations. That person did retire about 4 months ago, and that's why that work is stopped, because we don't have anyone to do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, thanks so much. My name is Nikhil Goyal, Ward 3 resident and sociologist at UVM. 2 questions. One is, I know you talked about the recruiting crisis. Are there ways in which we can build pipelines with the high schools to encourage them to go into law enforcement and corrections? Is that something that could be bolstered to ensure that we actually have ingrown talent for the department? And then second, one of the big challenges I know is around the clearance rates for violent crimes. What are the strategies the department is planning to use over the next couple of years to make sure that unsolved cases are solved and victims receive justice for those issues?
That's certainly, so I'll take that in reverse order. Of all the things that we're doing really well at right now is solving violent crime. So to the best of my knowledge, and I mean, it's a metric that a police department would be proud of, but probably shocking. The last time that we actually had an unsolved homicide in this city is 1990. So everything since that, at least in the murder category, has been solved. And we do have a full complement of detectives that work on, felonious assaults and other violent crimes. And I think we're doing a really good job there. In terms of justice, like, we're a referral agency. So, and I tell this to our staff all the time, intrinsically, cops need to be motivated by responding to crime and disorder, settling those situations, keeping people safe, preserving evidence in the integrity of criminal investigation and then property. And then ultimately we make referrals. And one in large part is to the criminal legal system. And I know another person here commented about kind of the challenges with that system. And that is what it is. The police have no influence over that. We have a very constructive and professional relationship with our state attorney. And on the cases that matter, I know that she and her deputies work really hard in terms of seeking bail or no bail or conditions that are adequate in those cases. But there is construct of our bail and conditions of release law, which were changed by the legislature in 2018, that are largely problematic. And I know that the administration at the state level has an omnibus bill this year, and there's some recommended changes to those systems, and we'll see what happens there. But again, in terms of what we see of throughput in the criminal legal system here in Chittenden County, it's not much because of not only our overwhelming caseload that the judges are trying to handle at the courthouse on Cherry Street, but the backlog that complicates that. And really what the sticking point is that the trial docket is filled with murders, attempted murders, and other violent crime. And those that have been justice involved for a really long time understand this dynamic that is, if you are in the community constantly committing misdemeanor crimes that are not violent, you're going to be released on conditions of release. Just it's a matter of law. As long as you make some effort of going to court on a regular basis, you will be released. And the plea agreement, frankly, gets better for you. And that has been the same philosophy amongst those that are really immersed in the criminal legal system that they've held for my entire time in this career, which is 30 years. So that's really kind of the quandary that we're in. And it kind of overlaps with some of the other things that we're talking about when we talk about the behavior downtown, with whether it's public drug use or drinking, or even some of the unmet social service needs and mental health crises that we see in the community. Those that cannot help themselves or are unwilling to change their behavior, there aren't leverage points to force people into treatment. And I think there's a lot of academics that would argue, for good reason, that you can't force a person into drug treatment successfully. And in fact, when a person desires drug treatment, ultimately it takes several attempts before they can find success in that regard. And it's very similar, but even more complicated on the mental health front. And we have a lot invested in trying to serve people where they are, low barrier services. But a lot of these folks that are really present all the time downtown, first off, the number of them is smaller than one might think. We're not talking about hundreds of people, but we are talking about 50 or 60 people that are living what is a life they probably don't want to live on our sidewalks, but are either unwilling or unable to engage in any level of meaningful service to change their behavior. And I know that's a frustration, not only the police department, because we're not necessarily tooled to do that work, but really a frustration of our partners, whether it's our team in the Cape division of the police department or our street outreach team, in trying to get folks to a better place.
Thank you, Chief.
I missed, what was the other part of the question? Burlington Technical Center does have a criminal justice program. I will say that's not the perfect age for us, because you have to be 21 to be a police officer. An area that we're going to examine is we hire typically college folks to work beach and parks for us. You've probably seen them on the marketplace. They pedal bikes on the bike path. That's a really great spot to identify people that are at local institutions of higher education. Generally, they're like in an apartment lease and they maybe really like the area. So if we can get them kind of in the organization and on rainy days, get them on ride-alongs with our officers and do a better job of marketing why our officers are here. I mean, if you want to police in an urban environment in Vermont, you have to police here. If you want any shot of meaningful diversification in your career as a police officer, meaning like assignments in detectives or with our emergency response team, formal leadership, we have everything to offer. If we had, a full staff, we can really build out those ranks, but it is exciting to be here. Burlington has always had a number of challenges as it relates to being the only downtown and really a hub for social services, but it's also kind of the grit that makes it fun to be a cop. So we need to market that to our prospective employees, because everyone approaches why they want to be a police officer and where you want to be a police officer differently. And I think we could tell a better, more compelling story to at least find the people that want to join us and do this tough work.
Chief, could you elaborate a little bit more about the changes in 2018 and how that's impacted the work of the department and policing in Vermont in general?
So from a very, very high level, I can't speak to the actual statutory changes that were made. That's not my expertise. I will just say that it has kind of created this environment where, again, as long as you comply with the court, you're generally released on conditions. And what we've kind of termed it as is a catch and release or a turnstile affair. And, it can be demoralizing for the officers to say, like, why do we have to go out and do this? Why are we continuing to do this work? I mean, the answer to me is it's our job. It doesn't matter. We've got to do it. We've always kind of had a different opinion of what the criminal legal system should be doing in terms of adjudication cases. I think an area that's probably very fertile for us moving forward is stronger partnership with our community justice center. There is a lot of meaningful work that can be done in resolving first-time offenders, low-level criminality with a restorative process where the person has to accept responsibility, has to face the person that they've harmed, and the community actually gets a voice in that process and can talk about how the community was negatively impacted. And these programs, it's existed here in Burlington for a long, long time. It hasn't been used super well by the Burlington police in the last few years, but I do believe that that is a good spot to at least create fewer recidivists. Other areas of the country that use these programs see less recidivism with folks that successfully resolve either first intervention or low level criminality through the restorative process. So we are going to work closely with the CJC to better operationalize that. But I would say that, as we begin to dig out of where we've been, there's a little greater optimism. And again, the state attorney and her office, they're a great partner on the cases that matter. And we've also found great partnership and always have held great partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office in terms of drug trafficking that rises to that level. So there are any number of trafficking organizations that operate here in the greater Burlington area. They are, here for profit. They are not the people that we see out here suffering on our sidewalks. They're simply making their profits there. They also engage in sex trafficking. They also engage in the trafficking of firearms out of Vermont to either New England or New York City. And that's where we lean into our relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office when we make those cases and look for the criminal legal action at that level.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Quiet group. Going once, going twice.
I'll do.
Uh,
I'm back like a bad petty, a stick in your spoke.
I made a person get off their bike before I walked in here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I know that we've had police cars on Cherry Street and Bank Street and officers walking around, which is nice. I think it makes a difference. I don't have the money to rent you a space on the marketplace, but I think we could use one for a lot of reasons. Tourists looking for help immediately. Somebody being present on a regular basis, and I know you're short-staffed, but if we could have a spot someplace on Church Street with windows that are visible to what's going on, I think it'll make a difference, because it makes a difference when your help is downtown. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the observation on our initiatives downtown. So again, when I got here, one of the first things I wanted to do is use our limited resources in a very strategic way. Policing in the city is oftentimes perennial. We always know that City Hall Park is going to be kind of a friction point, and the marketplace in turn behaves in a very similar way. And it's really this time of year where we can kind of set the tone and see, who's out there. Can we get them connected with services? Are they on probation? How can we influence the behavior? How do we address the low-lying conduct again to bring back a semblance of shared respectful use of what is the crown jewel of the state of Vermont? When you think about the marketplace and what it's offered, you can't travel anywhere in this country and they say, where are you from? Vermont. Oh, I've been to Burlington, right? Once in a while, someone say they went to Stowe. But that crown jewel's got a little bit of tarnish on it. And we talk with our staff all the time that a good police department, excellent public safety service is part of the vibrancy of a community that lends to itself to, residents feeling good about where they live, where business can actually find economic vitality. We're an important part. And despite of the challenges that we're going to face for a long time in terms of human resource, we got to figure out how to force multiply a little bit. So to that end, I'm less inclined for a kiosk or a storefront. Simply, we could never staff it in a meaningful or predictable way, and it would become kind of another failed initiative. So years ago, when they moved the bus stop off Cherry Street, the old ticket booth that was out there with Ron Redmond, we looked at that as a potential kiosk or something like that. And even then, we decided that it just wasn't worth the investment because we wouldn't be there enough. But we are committed to the extent that this device here, the radio, this is what cops chase. And so when they have available time right now, we are directing officers to be down here on Church Street in City Hall Park. And then there's other areas of focus. We are well aware of what's going on Bank Street, and we are well aware of what's going on Clark Street. We've got another area on Elmwood Avenue that's a little problematic, and another area on Manhattan Drive that's problematic. And, taking those all apart, deciding which resource might be used. We are starting to leverage our community service officers. So they are not sworn police officers. They have some ordinance enforcement capacity. They are connected to us via our radio system. They do have a uniform and a presence that you do get some level of compliance and deterrence simply by their existence. And we're using them strategically in areas such as Manhattan Drive right now to see if we can curb some of the behavior with that level of intervention. And then again, just in an effort to use what little we have in the most effective way possible.
Thank you. And before I take the next question, just a reminder, we do have some flatbread courtesy of our friends at American Flatbread. Looks like we still have a fair amount left over. So if you have not had an opportunity to get something to eat, we encourage you to do that. Trudy, and then Daryl.
Chief, I had a question concerning the out-of-state drug dealers. One of my jobs is on another problem area, Center Street, and I seem to see that the out-of-state drug dealers get arrested and then they're right back there on Center Street. So shouldn't they be held to a higher, a different level than the local people since they're coming here out of state bringing drugs? Shouldn't they be just held? Why are they being released like the local people?
Right. So it would be my desire that they're held, but that's not a decision that, we make. And each defendant that's charged in the criminal legal system has their own situation. Factors that the court can consider is ties to the community. A lot of people a lot of sophisticated drug traffickers that are operating here in Vermont, typically they befriend a person that has a residence here. It provides them a lot of things, an address that they could use as their own. It provides them all the protections of the Fourth Amendment in terms of being behind a closed residential door. And some of those things allow the criminal legal system to set bail or conditions of release. And in turn, they're turned back out on the street. I don't know what the breakdown is. If people are actually being released on a cash bail and drug traffickers are paying that bail. I don't know what that number of people looks like, or if they're being just straight up released on recognizance. Again, that would be all speculation. It also matters greatly where we charge them. If they're charged in state court, they're afforded all the things I just explained. Generally, when out-of-state drug traffickers are charged in federal court, they are typically held pending trial, typically. But again, each case is different, and those are not decisions that the police department is party to.
Thank you.
Trudy Richmond. I live on Elmwood Avenue right next to Pod City. So I guess my question to you is I'd really like to honestly know what your thoughts are. You can give pro and con to putting another center that's going to draw more people, unsavory folks, to our area if we put that shoot up site downtown. I'd like to know the pros and cons, and I'd like to be really honest and not just politically correct.
Yeah. And again, I will, this is not, political theater. I'm not an expert on where you locate.
Just your thoughts.
Yeah. Social services. But I think we see a lot of friction points here in Burlington because we are the hub for all the social services, regardless of what neighborhood they might be in. You think about where Feeding Chittenden is, it's still close by, right? Mm-hmm. So is there logic in having them spread across the county, especially when we don't have the best transportation system? I don't know. And I know that in my experience in South Burlington, let me back up. When the methadone clinic first opened here in Burlington, there was a lot of speculation and outrage that there's going to be a ton of criminality up on South Prospect Street because of its location. Now, different, that was, a prescription drug being administered certain hours of the day, but none of that came true. And then eventually the Chittenden Clinic went on to be on San Remo Drive in South Burlington. Mm-hmm. And South Burlington had a large community conversation about its placement. That clinic still operates to this day, just shy of 1,000 or so clients that are finding success in addressing their addiction. But there are, again, similar friction points with when folks get off the bus, how they behave, stores that they commit retail theft at, that between, Dorset Street, making it to the clinic and back. So again, it's more of a question of what do we do to people to hold them accountable so they can have access to resources, right? So if we're going to incentivize and resource folks for success, what in turn should community expect from the people?
Thank you. Yes.
And I think, that's a bigger question than location and more about expectation setting, and then also figuring out, how could we better engineer success? And I know that the mayor has talked publicly about the engagement with the Department of Public Safety and the situation table. It's what it's called. It's essentially a ComStat, but these programs are running now in Bennington, Brattleboro, Springfield, Rutland. City of Burlington's coming online next. We have a lot of service providers here in Burlington and even in the greater area. I hope that when we engage in this situation table process, that we can find better synchronization of those services. And ultimately what happens as part of the process is that whomever is assigned the problem, it's usually a person that's elevated. It could be a location, but whomever puts their hand up to say, we think we have the solution, they're held accountable to delivering on something. And then we have to see, like, if it didn't work, then what's the reset? But I think accountability on the people that we're trying to help, I think we need to try to figure that out. Thank you.
You're right.
Accountability for the people we're trying to help.
Any further questions for the chief? We've got about a half hour left for the Q&A session here. Councilor Grant.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the work that you're already doing. People are definitely noticing the changes that are occurring, and it's really meaningful to us, especially in the Central District. I was wondering, so a couple of questions. I know you're already looking at the priority response plan that has, as a police commissioner and a city councilor, I think that's one of the number one complaints, followed by the online reporting system. And I was wondering if you could give an update on that, both the online reporting system for drug tips and then the online reporting system for the other items, like what the plan going forward might be. And finally, just a little bit more detail on the situation rooms. Is that what we're calling it? I'm sorry, situation table. Thank you. That is a great idea. It's being effective in other areas. And it's the idea also of not only like a hot spot, but a hot person per se, if you could talk about that a little bit. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to defer on the situation table question simply because we're going to have training here so we can learn what our roles are and essentially set our goals up. But it is much more human focused than it is location focused, although very much correlated. In terms of online reporting, I will say that if you have a drug tip, the online reporting is super effective because that goes right to our drug unit supervisor's email box. I get it in my email box, and it helps us kind of determine the acuity of certain situations in the community. I know that Councilor Grant, you brought up the recent situation on Hyde Street. That was more luck than skill. The drug unit had already identified some of the players involved there and had an active investigation, and we just had the evidence and the timing in order to take the intervention step. I will say that there are times where we get information in on the drug tip email where it's part of a bigger case, and unfortunately, those take time. But when the drug unit takes their time and does those cases, those are the ones that result in apprehending mid to upper level traffickers that are ultimately held responsible for their behaviors. And that's very, very helpful. The drug tip line is also very helpful in terms of like what we're seeing in Bank and Center Street, where it's kind of a transient affair, if you will, not meaning people living houseless, but rather these are mobile folks. They're just meeting in a public spot. That's just a different intervention from a police strategy, and we'll look to engineer that. It will require us to leverage some overtime, because if we're going to set up, say, surveillance and start to take some street level intervention actions on a drug set like that, we will have to have people that aren't beholden to the radio set up to do that work. And then again, like working with the prosecutor's office to make sure that when we have someone that is viable for criminal prosecution, that we make those cases solid and make them palatable for her office in the criminal legal system. And then when we encounter other folks that are simply there buying drugs for feeding their substance use disorder, trying to make referrals so they can just better their situation. There has always been a different types of folks in these scenarios, and it's really complicated, and it's not necessarily worth the time of the criminal legal system to really try to go after someone that is just trying to survive in the moment, that's not making a single penny, that's actually harming themselves more than they're harming anyone else, to try to incarcerate them. That does no good. On the other hand, when there are folks that are profiting from drug trafficking and really causing harm to our city, we have to make really good cases on those folks, so there's a meaningful intervention to change their behavior. So that's helpful. Online reporting, our legacy system simply broke. And on the backside of that, we didn't have the humans to actually look at what was being reported and to follow up on cases that should have been. So we do have a new solution that would be a direct report into our existing records management system. Right now, we're identifying people within the organization that should be involved in the review process, because unfortunately, some high level criminal activity is reported there, and it's stuff that we should be attending to much more quickly.
Thank you, Chief. Charlie Giannoni.
You say like a drug tip, and what's a good drug tip?
Yeah, so we get a lot of stuff that's really valuable. Involved vehicles with license plates, pictures of folks that are involved. I've seen quite a bit on Clark Street, and I understand. I'm a bit of a field person. I go out in the street quite a bit. Don't tell the mayor, because I'm supposed to be doing a lot of budget related things right now. But it's good to be out there. It's frustrating because back when we had our 5 patrol areas in the city and we had 5 or 6 cops out on every shift, like it was a lot easier to be we call it omnipresent, right? But just kind of be everywhere, be unpredictable when a uniformed car may roll down the street. That helps quell things, but it doesn't get at the root cause. It doesn't. So I hope that we can continue to use what we have in terms of sworn officers serving in patrol and our community service officers to kind of create that ambient deterrent effect. But I really hope that through the situation table process that we can identify people that are ripe for other interventions and that they're effective. Maybe that's overly optimistic, but.
Susie Dow.
Between the hours of 7 and 8 in the morning, are you short-staffed during that time?
Yes.
Okay.
So
when I see the drug dealers is during that time period.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to bore you with how this police department runs, but we have 3 shifts in patrol. They're 10-hour shifts. So days start at 7:30 in the morning and they wrap up at 5:30. Evening starts at 4:45. They technically try to go home at 2:45 in the morning. And then our midnight shift overlaps from 10 at night until 8 in the morning. Our midnight shift is our lowest census. So generally there's 2 officers and a sergeant on between 3-ish in the morning and 7:30 when days are ready to go. So that's a big challenge for us.
The drug dealers must know that, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean, like anyone that's good at their business, whether it's criminality or selling whatever, they know, right? They know when to make their money. It's not to say that we're not ignoring that, but I will tell you, I worked a long time in the drug unit here, almost probably 8 years, actually. We never really out on the street buying evidence at 7 or 8 in the morning. Maybe it's changed that dramatically, but I know our drug unit is typically much busier with their investigations later in the day. But, the opioids kind of change the whole landscape of drugs because it's no longer social. It's more, substance use disorder based. This is not voluntary. Folks are going to look to obtain the drug that they need any given time of day. I will say that I'm usually in the city fairly early. You ride around. There are things that people report to us as drug activity that are not, it's not drug activity. It's other behavior that I will call antisocial, outside of the norms, but it's not definitively drug activity. But we also see some really sad things. I hadn't used Narcan for about 10 years. 2 weeks ago, I was over on Orchard Terrace early in the morning, driving up the block. I said, man, that guy, he looks like he is sound asleep. I got out of my car. I was like, does this fellow have sleep apnea as I'm trying to wake him up? I'm like, no. I had to run back to my car and get my Narcan and get an ambulance there. And it's sad. It's sad, because people have made decisions in life, but I really believe that ultimately they never envisioned this.
Right, I agree.
Charlie, and then Rob.
There goes the error here.
There we are.
Because you have a.
No, stay there.
Stay there.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate all this. It's an improvement straight away from the former chiefs. I knew two of them. My name is Charlie Messing. I'm from New York. It was getting this bad in the middle of the 80s in New York. It's small enough up here so that if there's a lot of identification, like say someone watches the park and says that, well, they have to think of it as individuals. There are types of people and there are just people. And the more we think of everybody as just a pack of criminals and druggies, the less we're going to actually get to know them, identify them, be able to help them. Some of these people were trapped into this and they don't know how to get out, and somebody's making money off of keeping them there. There's so many things to try to confront. It used to be that the drug people would kill you faster than the drugs would, but now the drugs have caught up. I'm really glad that you know what you know and you're working on it. And I've worked on things like this before. I live 1 block from City Hall Park, and I think there are particular people and there are particular types of occasions. And if anybody can do anything that's like a study, it will help a great deal, because you want to reach people and you want to reach the people. And the more you just say, it's a rolling piano, it's going down the hill, we don't want to step in front of it. We don't want to get it like that. We don't want to look at it like that. We want to look at it like we can keep them from starting rolling. Or if they're starting rolling, they're just starting rolling.
Charlie, do you have a question for the chief?
A question?
Yeah.
Well, he's answered a good many questions that I have. And I think suggestions, I've heard the answers to my questions already. Now I'm on the loudmouth mode.
Say goodbye, Charlie.
And now I will leave you.
I've got a quick response, though, a reflection upon what you said. I think the 80s is an interesting reference because we know a lot of flawed drug policy and enforcement strategy came out of that period of time. And, I think an initial area for collaboration that the fire chief and I have found is in sharing similar data sets, identifying, patients that they're serving, people that our CAPE team is serving, and who we are also having police interventions with, and you kind of understanding who they are, an actual number, and then understanding kind of where they're falling through the cracks. And this is like great preparatory work for the situation table, but there hasn't been kind of that global or the holistic look over how certain folks, and again, I don't want to cast any more negative light. We have to kind of be empathetic in our approach to this and be solutions based. But I think by a little closer examination, a little deeper dive on, those 3 data sets, we can identify probably the top 20, 25 folks that are really problematic, and at least try to bring some resources to bear and see if we can influence the behavior. And, in terms of philosophy on the police, the role of police in an area like the City Hall Park, that's not an area that the police ever want to control, but we want to be part of the influence that changes the behavior so the entire community can enjoy the space, right? That park is for everyone. And some of those conversations, even with these folks that are out there suffering, it clicks. It clicks. When you tell someone like, you can't do that here if they are preparing to ingest drugs or they are kind of refusing to drink, but you need to go somewhere other than here if that's the way you're going to conduct yourself. And then that's not reliant on, is a ticket effective? Is the person going to be actually held accountable by the criminal legal system? That's just changing the environment in the park. Now, do we displace problems in that same way? We do. But again, it's a strategy that we're going to use as part of a broader toolbox, hopefully, as we bring this situation table online to better address the root cause of all these behaviors.
Thank you, Chief. Any further questions from folks who haven't heard? Rob?
So my name is Robert Perry. I don't live in Burlington, but I do own a property on Clark Street. There's been a lot of very interesting discussion, and thank you for that. But I want to make a couple of comments on one. So first, you talk about the drug user being like the only victim. I don't think that's true. I think the neighborhood, the people who are around, are also victims of their abuse. You also talked about people needing to hit rock bottom or want to move into treatment, and I think that's true. That you can't really. It's hard to force somebody, but I think you can force people into a rock bottom situation through law enforcement. And so I'm wondering why we can't. And this is a kind of like 2 questions. So what do you do when you come and intervene in open drug use? Because it seems we normalize it by allowing it to happen. It becomes, the mayor at a public hearing said, I walk by people using drugs openly every day. I'm like, that's just not a statement the mayor of the city should be making, that she has said, it's just normal. It's just normal for me to walk through the park and see people using drugs. That just seems wrong to me. So how can we take through police intervention and get people to force them to rock bottom, to say, you need to get into treatment or you need to go to jail? Those are your choices. Which one do you want? Because we'd rather get you into treatment than put you through the system, but it's up to you. How can we not force them into this rock bottom, stop normalizing drug use, and really start cleaning up the streets? So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, certainly. So there's so much of that the police don't control. So in terms of an actual punishment for drug possession, to force someone to rock bottom, that's the criminal legal system. What we have to balance is our finite resources. So if we have a person that has a substance in a syringe that we suspect that is likely fentanyl, and they're going to ingest it, could we actually arrest that person for the witness misdemeanor crime of drug possession? We could. and we're going to give them a citation, and then they're going to leave. And then that cop is off the road the entire time that interaction goes on. And it's much more effective in the status that we're in to use that cop to address 4 or 5 people in that geographic area, set order in that area, and then move on to the next challenge that we're facing. So it is a bit of a resource balance, ultimately knowing that we don't control the outcome. And what I do know 1000% is that there's not going to be meaningful throughput at the criminal legal system if we start flooding it with misdemeanor drug cases. We're doing the same thing right now with violations of conditions of release. The people that are in the community in absolute contempt of court by continuing to rack up misdemeanor cases, they're not being held to any greater, level of accountability by the criminal legal system. And it comes to a point where the prosecutor's offices, we're not going to file new charges because the docket already has 30 or 40 pending, and they need a global resolution so they can move on. And, a lot of that is not only some of the legislative changes that I mentioned that set up this quagmire, but those were really coming to roost when the pandemic closed the courthouse and the court stayed closed for a long time. And that is really, really problematic. So, as much as people have talked about the individual politics of our elected prosecutor, I will say that many of her policies are closely aligned with the laws that were put in place in 2018. And what we're facing now in terms of the backlog has nothing to do with the policies of the state attorney. Thanks, Chief.
So, Chief, I don't know, it's just a far-fetched question, but can we not just take that backlog and just squash it and start fresh with all the new crimes and new criminals and new activity?
So that's a question for the General Assembly. They have contemplated bills such as that, but there's also victims in that docket on some of these other misdemeanor cases, and to deprive them of their voice being heard as a victim, I think would be wrong, because there are crimes in there like simple assault and other victim-based crimes, or even retailers that have lost a ton of valuable property. They deserve to see those cases through if they're filed. And I think it's a broader question for our General Assembly, and it should be informed by we as Vermonters. But that there seemed to have been little appetite when that was introduced. It wasn't this session. It must have been in last biennium. Anybody we haven't heard from before?
Yeah. Hi, Brendan Sullivan. I live in Ward 4, but I work downtown, and I had a couple of questions. The first question, you mentioned earlier that you guys are a referral agency for certain cases. My question becomes with dealing charges, because possession is different. Minor dealing infractions that may be illegal under federal law, because a gentleman mentioned that we're only going to get help if we use the feds. What are the chances of increasing referring those? I know well enough that if you hand the federal government a case that they have a guaranteed prosecution on, they'll take it. And maybe shifting these cases that would have no impact if they went through the state courts, even if it sounds small, to a federal court.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the federal government has thresholds set for prosecution, and generally the cases that we make that meet those thresholds, so that it's usually either based on the person's criminal history in terms of conviction, the involvement in violence, or drug quantity, right? That teeter those over. We do have great success in partnering with the U.S. Attorney's Office on those. I will say, under the current federal administration, that the U.S. Attorney's Office here, unlike everywhere else, they have had a different shift in mission, and they are focused on different issues aligned with the federal administration's objectives. So we haven't lost any bandwidth there, if you will, as the Burlington Police. But
it's not lost. Maybe is there more bandwidth to be gained?
There's, no. Okay. In the cases that we can bring to the feds, we always bring them there first. Because they're just much more effective.
Okay. Thank you.
We have 11 minutes left for the Q&A. Is there anybody that has a question that has not yet had an opportunity to ask a question? Vicky?
Quick question, maybe a long answer, but
It may be too soon for you to know this, being on the job. I mean, you've been on lots of jobs for a long time. If you could, when you go, or if you go to the legislature next time, what would be the question, the burning question that you have or issue that you would like explored or a law to be passed?
Yeah, so let me talk first about the priorities of this administration. One is advancing gun controls in our bars downtown. We've always had a gun violence problem associated with our bars downtown, and I think that's a good issue to bring to the General Assembly. I'll say in my other role, I serve on the executive board of the Vermont Chiefs Association. And when I served as the South Burlington chief, I testified extensively at House Judiciary on issues related to retail theft, accountability for low-level but chronic misdemeanor defendants, and kind of the negative outcomes that we're seeing in the community in terms of not having any accountability. Now, has there been any great strides made in those areas? No, but I do feel as though that we need to figure out how to be good human service providers, meaning government, but also have clear guidelines for accountability. And when someone has broken whatever set of rules there are and refuse to change their behavior, there has to be some type of meaningful intervention that we're not using now. Now, is that, better pretrial supervision? Does that mean incarceration? Does that mean drug screening? I don't know, but I know that those elements of the criminal justice system have been studied, and there's got to be a better model out there than what we're trying to use here in Vermont.
Yeah. Great. This isn't a question, but it's just a dream, which is, and I'll stop after this. And it's my dream is that you and the governor would get together and have coffee and walk the streets of Burlington, and that the governor would see what's going on. Maybe it's happened already.
So it shouldn't be lost on anyone that our current commissioner of public safety is a former deputy chief of the Burlington Police, Jennifer Morrison. And I know as part of the cabinet, she works very closely with the governor and has an affection for Burlington and knows what's going on here. I don't think it's lost on the state administration what's going on here. But again, that's more of a role for our city administration than it is me directly. If our mayor were to ask me to engage in any level of that type of interface with the governor, I would do as asked by the mayor.
So our issues are the state's issues.
Certainly.
I think. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks for being here, Chief. It's really nice to meet you. I've actually never met you before. I'm about to be a resident of Ward 3, really excited to be in this community. And I'm hearing a lot of folks have concerns about substance use and public suffering and overdose. I'm also hearing that forced treatment is not an intervention that has been successful in the past. I'm wondering from either a law enforcement or from a law enforcement perspective, what interventions, whether that's law enforcement or something else, has been successful in intervening or supporting folks who are using substances publicly and struggling with overdose?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I wish I had the answer. The thing that saved lives is Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
So the availability of Narcan has been a game changer. But I will say that the evolution of fentanyl and now xylazine in our drug stream is very, very concerning. So, and I think some other initiatives that have worked well, lowering the access, the barriers to buprenorphine, what the Burlington Fire Department is potentially using in the community. Again, that's a buprenorphine-based program. I think, that again is saving lives, but that's dealing with the crisis. Have we gotten left of boom in this situation? We haven't. Mm-hmm. We haven't. Have I had people that I've arrested years ago on, larger drug cases that have been afforded like some really top shelf drug rehabilitation while incarcerated by the federal government? And they've thanked me for that intervention in their life. That has. And again, so does that mean that on at a state level, should we have some type more of an investment in pretrial services? So people that have teetered in to criminality are actually being monitored and held accountable, drug screens, incentivized, if you will. Again, that's really not my expertise, but having a lot of relationships with folks that are in these scenarios, those are just some high level observations.
Great. Thank you.
Guess I'll jump in. So we've heard, I think, it really comes down to behavior for a lot of folks. And when people engage in behavior that infringes upon the rights of others and causes harm to our community, there needs to be some kind of accountability and consequence for that. And when we see that that behavior is driven by an untreated medical condition, whether a mental health condition or substance use disorder, we should certainly try to get them into treatment. But we've also heard that a number of these folks have refused to move in that direction. And under the current binary paradigm, the only option is we can send them to corrections if they don't want to go. But that may get them well, but if they come out at the other side of that, they're going to have a criminal conviction, which will then have an impact on their ability to seek housing and employment and other things. Do you think that there would be a benefit of maybe exploring a third option where someone could be taken out of, removed from the street and given into a setting that doesn't ultimately result in them being criminal, like potentially, like, I don't know, like a compulsory program for compassionate custodial care, shall we say?
Yeah. So involuntary civil commitment has been debated in this state for a long time, more so on the mental health side of the equation. Again, that's the efficacy of those programs are way outside of my wheelhouse. But again, do we need some type of better state-led intervention for those that are living either undiagnosed or formerly diagnosed in the community that have slipped away from their treatment plan, and now we're in this kind of this middle space? Because really the trigger point that we have to leverage is once they present an articulable harm to themselves or others, can we then ask a judge to issue a warrant? Then we bring the person to the emergency room where then they're screened, and then maybe they're still in that status or maybe they're not. And there's no guarantee that they're actually going to get a service delivered in that model. So, I think more thought and exploration by experts in that space should be invested? I do, but again, it's outside of what my objectives are as police chief.
Thank you, Chief.
But it would help greatly.
Probably got room for one more question here. We're at 7:57. If anybody, sure. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Giannoni, Ward 2. So obviously we're trying to rebuild Burlington Police Department. So everybody knows that. But I also see at the federal level some massive layoffs, massive funding reductions, et cetera. And I'm getting a little concerned here that you're going to have fewer resources going forward. So I'm curious if there's anything specific that your department is about to lose, or you fear you might lose a program, or you might lose some funding for cameras or weapons or something. Is there anything hovering that's going to make your job more difficult?
Yeah, it's a great question. The city relies on a lot of different federal grants for different programming. We less so at the police department have grants that may or may not be affected. So like in terms of our drug unit, we do have one detective that's assigned at the DEA. It doesn't seem like their mission set has been shifted at all. We're not really a benefactor of any grant funds in that regard. So there's nothing that really jumps off the page in terms of what I think would be fiscal peril for the police department. But I think there's a lot of grants comprised in the city revenue streams that potentially could, and that's problematic. I will say that our reliance on our federal partners really comes at the investigative level. So what we are actually trying to do in terms of restoring a little bit of order and making life better in the streets, we don't have federal assistance in those endeavors. So I'm not concerned there. I'm not concerned about the team that we have leaving for federal opportunities. But I would like to say before we're done here tonight that the police officers that we do have serving here are the finest, most dedicated professionals. And I've worked at this organization a long time. Just by way of example, in 2000, the Burlington Police started issuing sequential badge numbers with the number 200. And today we're up to 427. So that number of police officers, some have retired, many have left beforehand. The people that stick it out are the most experienced, professional, well-trained, and committed police officers that you could find in this state. And we should be very proud of them.
All right. Thank you, Chief. I think that concludes the time for our Q&A tonight. I appreciate you coming out and taking time. Pleasure. Thank you. All right, we'll roll into the discussion on the resolution, the proposed resolution related to the location of the proposed overdose prevention center here. Just wanted to kind of go over the process there for that. Again, like everything else, we want to make sure that folks are recognized before they speak, just so that we can kind of have some order to the process here. We're going to give each member an opportunity to speak for up to 2 minutes on the questions on the resolution. Nobody will be allowed to speak twice until every member has had an opportunity to speak at least once, and no one will be allowed to speak a second time until everyone has had an opportunity, or a third time until after everyone has had an opportunity to speak at least twice. And then after everyone's had an opportunity to speak 3 times, we will roll into the vote on that. So is anybody here from Ward 3 that does not have a wristband? I think maybe Sam. In there. So yeah, in terms of the process here per our bylaws, the voting is limited to folks who actually live in the ward. And under Robert's rules, only folks who have standing will be allowed to participate in the discussion. So with that, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda or the resolution there, Zach?
Yes, motion to adopt the discussion.
Resolution?
To adopt the resolution.
Do we want to waive the reading too, or probably pass out copies I hear? And I apologize. I meant to have the paperwork in the door and we didn't. But we can take a quick minute or two to give folks a chance to read it over. We do have a little bit of time here. Catch our breath, and looks like we still have some. Yeah, take a bio break and come back. Once we move into the discussion.
Okay, so it's when is that? I guess I'm unclear about the process.
We're going to get copies of the resolution out, give folks an opportunity to read through it if they have not already had that opportunity. And then we'll give Zach an opportunity to speak as the sponsor of the resolution. And then we'll just kind of go in the process. And it sounds like you have some things you'd like to say.
Well, I have amendments.
Okay.
Yes.
When will we post discussion actually get
after everyone's had an opportunity to speak at least 3 times, or we come upon the
Ideally before 9 p.m.
Yeah, we do need to be out of here. So there till people have a chance, and we can, someone wants to make a motion to call the question too. But really we want to give everyone an opportunity to speak and be heard.
I do have to teach tomorrow, so I ask kids.
We all have jobs. I'm very grateful I have a chill day at work.
We do not have Rolex Islands done still. I don't know the 6th grade done still. Where'd the what go?
Zach had a belt.
I do not have the pen. I have one in my bag if you want to grab it. On the podcast, yeah. Wow. But that's a pencil now. Oh, I can wait. No, no. I got wonderful.
Prestige.
So if everyone has had an opportunity to look through this, we'll get back here on the floor. I'd like to turn the floor over to Zach, who has made the motion to sponsor. If there's any comments you want to have on this.
Yes, since I've made the motion to sponsor the resolution, I would like to say that this is not a statement against the proposal of an overdose prevention site at large and within the city of Burlington. It is more or less that residents of the Ward 3 and specifically the downtown district are feeling adverse pressures from a lot of social services that have unknown accountability or transparency. And this is for us to draw our line in the sand and saying that Ward 3 residents and downtown district residents cannot take any more pressure from unaccountable or unknown transparency of social services.
Thank you, Zach. Lee, that's
Yes, I have a question, and depending on the answer, an amendment.
call that a point of information.
What's that?
That a point of information.
What is?
Question.
Okay, so a point of information. Let me get to the right resolve clause. Okay, so regarding on line 21, be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly believes that the best location for the proposed overdose prevention center is on the campus of the UVM Medical Center. So it's my understanding that UVM has declined to host the OPC. Has the author of this resolution talked to UVM and gotten a different answer?
So we've recently understood that is the same, and I think that an amendment to strike that and say that located at a designated medical facility would probably be a more appropriate wording there to make that.
So that actually might flow nicely into my amendment. And to be clear, all the local medical facilities so far have declined as well. But let me propose, so I have a motion to amend. My motion to amend lines 21, 22, and 23 reads as follows. Let me just make sure I'm reading my right motion here. I move to amend the second resolve clause to read, be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly supports a siting process for the Overdose Prevention Center that centers expert recommendations and includes meaningful input from impacted community members, including Ward 3 residents, people who use drugs, and local businesses. Thanks.
Do we have a second on the motion? Second. All right.
Lee, can I have that so I can type that into the minutes, please?
Like
I can't type
verbatim.
as fast as you say that.
I'll hold my phone.
All right. So the motion has been made to amend and it has been seconded.
Yeah, I'll write it down for you.
Okay, thank you.
So is there any discussion on the amendment? Anybody have anything want to say on the amendment?
Hear it again? I can hear it.
I can't type as fast as Lee can say that.
I'll read it. I will. I'll do it. I'll read a little slower.
Cards. Thanks for that.
No problem. Be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly supports a siting process for the Overdose Prevention Center that centers expert recommendations and includes meaningful input from impacted community members, including Ward 3 residents, people who use drugs, and local businesses.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Sit here right here.
Microphone.
Yeah, you got for the
Okay, let me get up here. So I guess my question with the amendment is, how is this all going to be facilitated and what kind of a time frame? And so we get everybody's opinion, which is kind of what we keep doing. I mean, how do we resolve that? We're going to have a bunch of opinions. How does that get resolved?
I think we do have a bunch of opinions and we do have some expertise in the room. Ms. Vesna, if you want to briefly outline the process in a minute or two, it's for the folks that have not had an opportunity to check that out.
Also, beside you on the table, there is a handout that I brought. It is also just kind of talks about site selection and planning process that the city will go through.
And just want to introduce folks. It's Teresa Vezina. Is it Vezina? Okay. used to the Vezina Trophy in ice hockey. So Vezina is the mayor's special assistant for overdose center prevention center implementation.
Yes. Oh, this is. Thank you, Chris. Thank you all. I'm not a Ward 3, but I live here in Burlington and have started with the mayor's office in December in this position to implement the Overdose Prevention Center in Burlington. And I will say that the site selection is absolutely the biggest thing on folks' minds. There's a lot of things that have happened. I only have a couple of minutes, so I don't want to go through like where we've been and where we are now. So this is about the location, from what I understand, and no location has been selected. There's a very specific plan set in place that will be strongly guided by community informed, data driven, and we'll be doing a neighborhood assessment and service assessment with an external research partner once the contract starts with the health department. So we are actually still waiting to have a formalized contract with the state, between the state and the city. Vermonters for Criminal Justice Reform, VCJR, has been selected as the city's partner to operate the Overdose Prevention Center. And I really love that y'all are talking about this now, because public discourse is going to be really important. And we all have to agree. I think that there are absolutely concerns that people have that are valid. We want to make sure that we are hearing your concerns. Otherwise, we won't be able to address them, right? So this is one of many, 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 many conversations I hope to have with you all and in even wider groups of people. There will be structured opportunities, community forums, probably surveys. Once the external partner comes on board from we'll use Pyre probably. They'll be able to help to map out exactly how we'll move forward with the neighborhood assessment and the service assessment.
Thank you,
Hope
Teresa.
that's helpful.
Teresa.
Yes, and anyone can grab one. I left
And
them up there.
Brooks, you had some comments you wanted to make on the proposed amendment.
Yeah, so I'm not in support of the amendment. Ward 3 is being beaten brutally on all fronts, right? Road work, drug use, all that kind of stuff. We just had 2 bonds get signed in that'll probably tear up our streets for the next foreseeable future. I don't know what the wording is, but it can't be in Ward 3 is my point. If it's a medical place or a doctor's office or in the hospital, awesome. We can't continue. I mean, thank God there's a list of people that want to have a business on Church Street, because if there wasn't, there would be so much vacancy at this point. I mean, the turnover of stores is unbelievable. So anyways, I will be quiet, but I'm not in support of that.
Any other comments on the amendment as proposed by Lee Morgan? All right, Sam?
Yeah, I just want to question the idea that the Overdose Prevention Center would be an additional burden on and not actually lift a burden and keep a lot of public use of drugs from happening in Ward 3 and rather in a safe medical facility. So I wouldn't count it as another burden. Yeah, thank you.
Before same rules apply. So if someone who hasn't spoken on the amendment would like to speak, Nora.
Can I just ask, can Lee's proposal statement be an addition, or does it have to be a replacement of the language as it stands now?
The motion as framed was as proposed to strike. Would you, we could ask Lee.
I guess as a counter
Would you want to have it as strike? Would you be open to having it as an addition to, or?
No, my amendment is to strike and replace,
Okay,
but
so-
I appreciate the ask.
So the amendment would be to reword that particular clause. So
Yes, and it was just number 21.
21 through 23.
21 through 23. Okay.
I mean, your name, sir.
Oh, Nikhil.
Nikhil, thank you.
Question to go to the microphone, please.
Thanks, Sean.
My question is, I know UVM has declined to have this facility on its campus. Is there a way to pressure the university or at least the medical the health network to accept it? Because I would imagine that having it in close proximity to a medical center where those individuals can actually receive other forms of healthcare would be the most beneficial for them as well as for long-term recovery. So I do wonder if there's a way that we can actually integrate that within the larger health network. So it's not just a one-off, people just go in and they don't get access to the other whole host of services that they deserve.
That was the intent behind that clause, I believe. And to your point, and that I understand how they've done it in other countries and some of the European models is that they have the facility designated medical center. But I did hear from a member of the legislature yesterday that there are concerns about loss of federal funding, which I believe is probably driving a lot of these decisions about not to house it. So it sounds like there may need to be some legal challenge or issues that are addressed there. But thanks for that.
And if I might just add that I do think it's really important that if we're going to make this a success, that it has all the resources and support of existing public health infrastructure, and that is the UVM Medical Center, or at least in this community.
Correct. Yeah.
Chris Bryan-Felker, Ward 3 resident. I am opposed to the amendment presented before the NPA currently. It's no secret that I am not a supporter of this type of facility. The reason why it's not going to be up at UVM is because it's not a healthcare facility. The same way that, a bathhouse isn't a healthcare facility, just because you're reviving somebody and bringing them back to life doesn't mean that you're a hospital. This is an unlawful facility, and trying to pressure UVM Medical Center to break federal law is something that's just not going to happen. I appreciate that Ward 3 is moving forward and saying we can't have this in our community here in Ward 3. That falls within your purview. I appreciate the community speaking up. I'm going to say, as a Ward 3 resident, this isn't going to happen in Burlington at all. Because nobody wants to have their property seized under the federal crack house statute for operating a crack house. This isn't going to happen. I appreciate what we're doing here tonight, but this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense, and it really needs to stop. So thank you. And thank you for everybody who's worked on this.
Any further discussion is limited to the folks that are valid voters and the residents of the ward. We'll give Ms. Vizina an opportunity to speak prior to taking the vote as the mayor's special assistant for the Overdose Prevention Center implementation. Any comments on the agenda, the proposed amendment from folks who have not yet had an opportunity to speak on it? All right, since looks like Brooks and then Trudy. Brooks and then Trudy.
I'm sorry. So let me articulate how I feel this is going to be an impact. So at this current position, for better or for worse, we have drugged houses all over the city, and people are using narcotics, but it's spread for all the wrong reasons all throughout the city. So assuming that this drug clinic is not going to supply the actual drugs, and assuming that we're going to be successful in people not doing drugs on the streets, but in this facility, so it's kind of like, okay, I've got a building and I've got people in this building doing drugs, and where are they going to get their drugs? There's going to be a ring. I'm making stuff up. There's going to be a ring of cars around that block, like it is in Elmwood or whatever, Elmwood Street or Elmwood Terrace up here when they put the pods in. That it's a different thing. I understand they're not sanctioning drug use there, but they don't allow it in there. But you get my point. I think it's just going to consolidate all the sale of all the, if what is hoped comes to fruition and everybody is doing this, it's just going to concentrate that entire drug sale all around the building. So now I'll be quiet.
So the latest statistics, as far as overdoses are concerned, is they are down nationally by about 25%. They're coming down. They've come down statistically over the past several months, many months, and they're projecting this is how it's going to go in the future. Every state in the union is coming down, including Vermont. Chittenden County is down from its high point. It's either down 21 or 22%, and it's going down. Overdose is going down. My question is, why are we jumping in now? That I've been told by the mayor, the last I heard, this one is not even going to come to fruition for another year, at least not in this year. They're projecting it's going to continue to go down, the overdoses. Why are we spending our money? Why are we coming in on the tail end of this? It's already solving itself. And they talk about the Narcan, and that's the reason this is happening. Why are we not providing, if we want to do something, provide treatment, provide a continuum of care, provide houses for people to go to substance abuse once they've completed their 30-day treatment. Houses that they can go to support their being substance free. What are we doing for the addicts on the street that want to get sober? They want to get sober. They want someplace to live sober. There is no place. We do not need an overdose prevention site. It's solving itself. We need to get ahead of the game and establish treatment, a continuum of care. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak on the amendment here? Not seeing anything.
Would I ever be able to ask some question?
Yeah, if you have a point of information, we can certainly ask Teresa. Yeah, you get a microphone.
Hi, Nora Aarons. Just curious if in your professional experience, expertise, what have you, if you have any knowledge on overdose prevention centers, safe injection sites, what have you, in terms of what it is called, can they also be a tool used for wound care, for example? Because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, for example, xylazine is not an opiate. So overdose is less of a concern or possibly no concern. But yeah, wound care is more of a concern with xylazine than with fentanyl, or safe injection sites basically just that very thing.
Thank you. That's a really great question, Nora. I think one thing that it comes across at the center would be a place that primarily focuses on the use of drugs, but it's actually just one of the many services that would be at the center. The center will actually be a holistic center. It will have medical staff on site. It will have embedded low barrier treatment options. It will have social services, recovery options. Hopefully, as we grow the program, access to basic human needs. We know basic human needs is a really important thing as well. It is also a place where people can build trusting relationships. People that are maybe out on the street right now that have nowhere to go, where they can go inside and they can build a relationship with a peer worker, with staff at VCJR, and then have another provider right there on site. They won't have to go to the hospital. They won't have to go to another location. So we're looking to have embedded ancillary medical services, which would also be wound care. If I look at the Rhode Island Overdose Prevention Center, they do a whole variety of other medical services. So that way people don't have to get up and go somewhere else. It keeps them there with the people that they trust. When we think about syringe litter, I know that this is a big thing as well. People will use there and leave their equipment there. They'll be under observation, reducing the idea of overdose. And that is just one part of the Overdose Prevention Center. You made a comment, ma'am, about the overdose is going down and it's kind of taking care of itself. So why move forward with this? And I say that we know our drug supply is very volatile and unstable, and we don't know what will be coming next. And very often the folks that will be utilizing this center are some of our most marginalized and highest risk folks for other things as well. So we'd also be creating a continuum of care from use to possibly managed use to possibly then abstinence-based treatment, or whatever that person chose. But if we don't find a way to engage with some of our hardest to engage with population, we might not ever get to that place. So I think looking at it long term, it becomes more than an overdose prevention center. It is more than that. So
thank you, Teresa. Question? You can make that motion. Yeah. Call the question, please. All right. I guess we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
So we're just voting
Well, let's
on
on
the
the
amendment
amendment.
as it
We're
is.
voting on the amendment.
You have to vote to call the question, actually. We made a motion to call the
So we need
question,
to,
so you have to vote.
all in favor of, thank you, Lee, for the point of information.
A lot, so.
Yeah, no, it's good to have someone there to help out. Yeah, we do need to vote on call. So all those in favor of calling the question, which is to actually vote on whether or not we want to adopt the amendment that Lee Morrigan has proposed.
But not actually voting for or against the amendment, just voting to vote for or against the.
Vote, correct.
Just for
Right.
Lee's part.
Voting to end discussion, move to a vote.
Thank you. That's actually clearer than I could have said it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Do we need a second?
Yeah, we need a second.
Teresa's wondering what the amendment is again.
You want me to say it again?
Are we voting to replace lines 20 or whatever?
1 through 20.
We're voting to end discussion on the vote.
Stop the talk.
Stop talking about it.
Can we vote on calling the question, and then once we vote on that, can we read Lee's proposed amendment and then vote on
Yes,
that? Okay,
that's we'll do.
That'll try
So-
to keep it clear. in my-
All in favor of ending discussion and calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like it's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. But now we will move on to a vote on the actual amendment itself and whether or not it will become part of the resolution that we have. So all those in favor of, let me read the amendment, probably me. Good.
Do you want me to replacing?
Please, yeah, go ahead. You made the motion. Go ahead.
I'd like to just what she's replacing.
Get back in front of a microphone here. Okay. I'll just quickly read the original, just so we know. Okay. So the original states, yes, so this is the original. Be it further resolved that the Ward 3, so this is line 21, 22, 23. Be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly believes that the best location for the proposed overdose prevention center is on the campus of the UVM Medical Center. And so my amendment would strike that out and change those lines to read, be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly supports a siting process for the Overdose Prevention Center that centers expert recommendations and includes meaningful input from impacted community members, including Ward 3 residents, people who use drugs, and local businesses.
All right. So all those in favor of the proposed amendment by Lee?
Aye.
Well, we haven't, whoa. Did you have a point of information there, Nora,
Question, yes,
about process or about the amendment?
about the amendment. Or maybe process, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Ask the
I
question.
don't know.
That's the question. And we'll see what we can do. What's the question?
I'm sorry to belabor, but I'm stuck. I'm sorry to belabor, but I'm personally stuck on wanting it to be an addition. So no disrespect, just I like both statements, versions of lines 21 through 23. And I am new to this process, so I don't know if it's possible for me to put that to a vote or if the time has passed.
So we need to move sequentially and we'll be voting on the amendment, which is to remove the original language and replace it with the language that we did. And then depending on the outcome of that vote, we could entertain an additional motion.
You're almost right. So basically, when you asked me before, that's called a friendly amendment, so I can just accept it without a vote.
Right.
I said no, so what you can do is, if you desire, and you may not desire to do this, but you may, you can move to amend the amendment before we vote on my amendment. So you can say, well, no, I want to put this question to the room since you didn't accept it as a friendly amendment. I move that we keep both. And if that gets a second, then we would discuss that, vote on that, and
then go back to vote. Oh, okay, well. So what is the formal language I need to use to carry that out real quick, not to extend?
I think it'd be I move to amend the proposed amendment to add the wording in addition to rather than strike. Would that be appropriate, Lee?
If you wanted to make the motion, you would say, I move to include both Lee's amendment and the original language.
Okay, I move to make the motion of including both the original language of lines 21 through 23 and to include Lee's version.
Is there a second for Nora's motion?
I just have a question.
Yeah, sure. We're all learning, or at least I feel like I'm learning.
Yeah, campus.
Yeah.
Are you talking also about like Prospect Street where they have the mental health? Is that also?
I think it would be whatever the campus is, but I think at this point we need to find out is there a second for Nora's motion? Charlie going second. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
So is there any thoughts on the motion to amend the proposed amendment? Oh, the things you learn from going.
Amend the amend.
Exactly.
There's something to be said for that. So is there any discussion on Nora's motion to amend it? What we would be talking about is to keep the existing language as it is written in lines 21, 22, and 23, and then inserting Lee's language immediately following that, in addition to rather than removing the original language, we would just be adding it to. So any questions on that? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. We are at a half-hour point. We haven't got to the point to discuss the meat of the main agenda. So anybody, then I'm going to say, let's go a vote on Nora's amendment. Nora's motion to amend the amendment to add it.
There we go. Motion to amend the amendment.
As an addition. So I guess all in favor of the motion to amend the amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. All right, so I think we need to do.
We need to do count.
Yeah, we're gonna do a count here.
Okay.
You want to facilitate the count, Johnny?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so I guess if you are supporting the motion to amend the
No, I thought
amendment,
government was fun.
let's just. The amendment.
We're still just
the motion
voting.
To amend the amendment that Nora made.
We're
which-
voting on my thing still.
Yes.
We haven't moved.
Wanna
We have
add
not moved on
the
yet.
Or against language to the original language as in addition to, rather than in place of. Let's raise your hand if you're gonna vote aye. 1, 2. Let me see it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, got 4. All those opposed to the motion to amend the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, the motion fails and we're back to the original motion to called. So all those in favor of Lee's amendment, which would result in we would strike lines 21, 22, and 23 and replace it with the language that states, be it further resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly supports a citing process for the Overdose Prevention Center that centers expert recommendations and includes meaningful input from impacted community members, including Ward 3 residents, people who use drugs, and local businesses. That would be the language. So all those in favor of the motion, the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, I guess we're gonna have to do a hands thing again, so. All those in favor, just raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What are we voting on again? Are we voting on her amendment or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. All those opposed, the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, the proposed one. It was. 7
Six
opposed.
versus 7.
Having a math challenge here. We had, looks like.
Somebody didn't vote.
Yeah, so.
We had somebody abstain.
Because you counted, we know there are, the total number of bracelets.
We have people abstain. It's okay.
So,
You don't have
you don't have to vote. Fair
No, I
enough.
just
All right.
didn't.
So we're back to the original motion as introduced. So now we will take comments on the original language. So Trudy.
Again, my question is, when you talk about the UVM campus, properties of campus, like you said, are you including like South Prospect where they have that mental health clinic, that new mental health clinic that the community?
Mental health urgent care.
There you go.
I think that the campus would include all of the properties of the UVM
Sorry.
would be in the
Okay. As long as that's possible.
Would it be helpful if we shared what ward that's in? I'm
Well,
just
that shouldn't
asking.
matter.
Okay, I'm just asking.
all right, let's start de-recognizing. Lee.
All right, so I have another amendment. So for the third resolve clause, I will read it here. So I have another amendment. So it's regarding line 24, 25, and 26 was the top of the back of the page. So the original language reads, be it further resolved that the Ward 3 NPA vigorously opposes the establishment of an overdose prevention center within the downtown core or the central business district. I'll keep my reasonings short and sweet for opposing this. It's that study after study recognizes that these services work best when they're most accessible, and this actually builds upon the legacy of an action that former Mayor Weinberger did not get to, is he was actually trying to get a methadone clinic back into downtown because he recognized this. So acknowledging his legacy, I am going to move to strike and replace that language with, I move to amend that the third resolve clause read, the Ward 3 NPA recognizes that site selection must balance community concerns and public health needs and supports a transparent, expert-led process without preemptively excluding downtown. And I can read that one more time.
Write it down to you.
Yes, recognizes that site selection must balance community concerns and public health needs and supports a transparent, expert-led process without preemptively excluding downtown.
Okay, so we are at about 25 minutes left. We're still going on amendment here. So if somebody has something burning that they don't want to say about the newly proposed amendment, we're certainly willing to give you a floor, but I would like to move this along and have a conversation about the substance of the resolution. So anybody want to talk about the new proposed amendment?
Do we need a seconded thing?
Yeah, that we do.
Okay.
Sam? All right, so now it's been properly seconded, language that Lee has proposed. Again, I'm not seeing anyone wanting to speak on that, so I'm thinking we're gonna go into.
Milo, do you wanna?
You don't live in Ward 3, sorry.
Central District Councilor.
I understand that, but you don't live in Ward 3.
She represents Ward 3. I represent.
The bylaws are clear on that.
I did a point of information asking for the opinion of our Central District City Councilor.
No.
Thank you for that.
So I guess we'll vote on Lee's language. Lee, would you kindly read that one more time?
Sure.
The Ward 3 NPA recognizes that site selection must balance community concerns and public health needs and supports a transparent, expert-led process without preemptively excluding downtown.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to amend the third resolve clause lines 24, 25, and 26 as just stated by Lee Morgan, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, we'll do, yeah, we're gonna do a count again. So one, two, yay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the motion fails. All right, so unless there are additional amendments,
Yes.
how many?
Okay.
We can do one, we're gonna do one more.
So we got 3 turns to talk, so I'm utilizing it. All right.
And then I'll write down this one as well.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. I'm trying to type them in, but it's too quick.
All right, let's see. Okay. I had two. I'm just picking one, the one that I feel is most important. So that is, I believe, is this the last resolve clause? Yes. Okay. So this is the regarding the last resolve clause, which is lines 33, 34, and 35. Original language reads, finally, be it resolved that the Ward 3 Neighborhood Planning Assembly calls upon the state legislature to establish a compulsory program for compassionate custodial care for individuals engaged in the public use and consumption of illegal drugs and narcotics. So again, a very quick note on that. The reason why our society has moved away from compulsory compassionate custodial care, which our society used to go first move towards, is because involuntary abstinence, so whether that's involuntary ER visits that last for more than 12 hours, incarceration, involuntary treatment participation, if an individual addicted to substances is involuntarily kept away from their substance and they intend to return once they're released, which happens a lot with involuntary treatment, there has a huge increase for death, because what happens is when someone who is physically dependent on these substances, you build a certain tolerance. So you need to use at a higher and higher level to maintain your high. So what happens is immediately upon abstinence, even 12 hours, your tolerance goes down. But that user still needs that higher amount to get high. But what happens is you've lost your tolerance. So the user hits the street or goes back to their house, uses the same amount, dead. And this is widely accepted by the public health system as a huge increase of death. And so if we support this, I just want everybody to be informed. You are advocating for a measure that has been proven and accepted to increase overdose risk and death. So I move to strike. I move to strike the final resolve clause as compulsory custodial care is not supported by evidence, increases overdose risk post-discharge, raises ethical concerns, and has been widely condemned by public health experts. And that is my final amendment. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Just take it out altogether.
Strike. Okay.
Okay. Any on that, someone wants to speak? I'm going to avail myself of that opportunity. I think the challenge that we face here in downtown is that we have a number of folks who are struggling, but who are also known to be service resistant. And not surprisingly, these are the same folks that are engaging in behavior that infringes on the rights of others and causes harm to our community in other ways. So the idea, I think, was to take these folks and get them off the street so as to protect the larger community, but to do so in a way that does not cause them to come out on the other side as a criminal. You know, they're not going to have a conviction. They're not going to, have all the problems that come along with a criminal conviction, such as trying to get access to housing or getting a job afterwards, because those going through criminal justice system as it just kind of, I think, sets them up to failure and kind of supports what I think Lee was saying. So the idea is to take the folks that are causing the problems and remove them from society, kind of, as I like to say, send them to the box for a period of time, before they get free. And
that's a hockey reference for those who don't know.
So that, I think that was the intent behind that there, and that would clearly need to be something that would be debated. I would think at the legislature that would be a state change of state law. So that was the thought process behind that. So unless there's any other comments on that, and appearing that there's none, we'll
Just want to say, I'd like to make a comment.
I will give you the floor before we take the final vote. How about that?
Do we need like a seconded or
No.
early?
Thank you. I appreciate it. One of the things I just want to state is number one, there is going to be a process that will be transparent and will include the public in terms of citing a location for the OPC. I definitely think UVM should be involved, especially with regards to prevention and helping people in recovery. They do a lot of studies up there, so I kind of feel that they've been under-involved. But with regards to the OPC, all the studies around OPCs that are operating in other parts of the world, that are operating in our country and in Canada, it has to be where the activity is, and the Central District is the epicenter of the epidemic, not only in Burlington, but in Chittenden County and probably Vermont, given the number of incidents. The data there is very, very clear. We don't want people driving. We don't want people riding bikes. We need people to be able to walk to a facility. We will have a place. All these people that are hanging out that currently have no place to go, we will have a place. And I don't want it on Church Street, but it has to be in Central District. We are the epicenter. The data is clear. The data is clear. It is overwhelming. Fact-based, data-driven decisions, not fear-based. I understand where you're all coming from. I really do. I've been begging for help for us for such a long time. But this is to literally ignore processes that are occurring and will occur is deeply concerning. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Sure.
One of my real concerns with, leaving it up to committees and getting public input and doing it, it all sounds wonderful. It's warm and fuzzy. I mean, I want to sing We Are the World. I want to really break into that. But this is how we got the pods on Elmwood Avenue, right next door to where I live. There was all of this process. It was wonderful. They needed to be down there. They had to be right where the people were. We're going to all talk about it. We're going to have meetings. We're going to listen to you. Everybody, experts are going to talk. And lo and behold, what it ended up being, per Brian Pine, was a mayor's mandate. Words from his mouth. We got it because the mayor wanted it. And so I don't have a lot of faith in all of this meetings and hugging and singing We Are the World and all of that. That doesn't work. We got pods of city crammed down our throats.
Point of information, that's maybe what you're thinking.
Point of information is an opportunity to ask a question to seek it.
Yeah, I'm seeking information from you. Why are you so oppositional? I didn't even speak yet.
I just wanted to make sure.
So, point of information, can you please clarify what this resolution does and if it is binding?
The resolution is not binding. The NPA is purely an advisory body. It's designed to provide ordinary residents with an opportunity to interface with local elected officials and kind of take the pulse, if you will, of folks who live in the ward. I like to say it's not always best place to assess the majority opinion, but as I think we've seen here tonight, it is a good place to assess the diversity of opinions on any given issue. I have a point of information for Ms. Vezina, if you want, and you can stay if you don't have to stay. You remain here because I have a feeling there may be more questions. Has the city, we talked about the data, and I think there's some good points. I think Councilor Grant made some good points about folks being here. Has the city reached out and done any type of outreach to the targeted population and asked them, hey, is this something you guys would actually want? Is it something you would use? Or are we just kind of moving forward with the idea that if, we build it, they will come?
Yes. So this has been done many, many times over the years. And as many of you probably know, we've been advocating for this for a very long time. So surveys were done by local harm reduction providers. I used to work at Vermont Care, so we also took part in that, where we asked people who were currently using syringe service programs, if they would utilize the program. It was actually I still have the report. So that was done. As far as it being done right now, it's actually part of the actual, so the health department put together a 28-page document, which is the operating guidelines. In the operating guidelines, which is what our plan is based on, it includes going back out and getting current information. So that way we're not using information from before, but it also allows not just people who would use the program to have a conversation with them, but everybody, right? So the list is, I think it's like 2 pages long in the guidelines. So if you haven't seen the health department's operating guidelines, it's on the website. I can also get it over to you, Chris, so it's easy for you to distribute out to the members. And it's a really wonderful document because it does go through, and many of the concerns you're talking about are addressed within the guidelines. Pieces of the resolution are actually within the guidelines. It's required. It's required by the Act 178. It's required by now our contracts that will be put in place. And so I hope that I hear that things didn't go well with Elmwood. It was actually something that was brought to my attention when I took this role, that let's learn from our past mistakes. Let's try to do it different this time, and utilize the information and utilize people's thoughts and ideas instead of just listening but not using that information. And so I hope that we can do it different and can do it better. And this is a pilot. So just also, we are going to be doing a bunch of evaluation and baseline data, and then looking at some of the outcomes and looking at that data. I like what Councilor Grant said. It's like, this is data driven, and whether it continues or how it goes is also going to be data driven as well. So I know that's a long answer to your very short question, but just to kind of put a little bit more to it.
Okay, Zach has a question.
Oh, not necessarily a question, but I'd like to provide further clarification to Lee on the subject of NPA resolutions. And like, yes, considering that NPAs are an advisory body and that this will not be binding and turning into, it will not be incorporated into the city's legislature, but the all resolutions passed by any NPA do get distributed to the mayor, city councilors, department heads, and relevant officials on the matter to reflect what the constituency of said ward does, what their sentiments on any particular subject matter within the city government. End point.
All right, so I guess we'll open the floor for discussion on the merits of the final amendment, which is as introduced.
Do we need someone to second it or voting on it?
We're just having still discussion. So anybody have anything that they want to add on this? Okay, I think folks are. I have some comments I want to share, and I think that from my perspective as someone who lives and works in downtown, I think, we've got a couple different things going on here. I'll try to unpack as best I can. We heard from Chief LaChance last November that we clearly have a number of people in our community who are struggling and want to get help and cannot because there are barriers to access. We simply do not have enough beds. And I think most folks recognize and agree that that is a case. And that, in my view, needs to be a priority for the legislature because they need to do it. And when you look around the community and you see the folks that are most struggling with these issues, it's very clear they're not rolling with, Blue Cross or Blue Shield or MVP or any type of commercial insurance. They're lucky if they have Medicaid. Most of the providers, treatment providers, are for-profit centers. They don't necessarily take Medicaid. I think there's only one that does. And it's my understanding from talking to some of our service providers that if any individual wants to move to treatment, but they have a history of violence, they're automatically disqualified. So the way I see it is the people most in need of services right now are least likely to get it. So my message is for the state legislature. We need you guys to step up and figure this out, because right now the people most in need are least likely to get it. And this is really, truly a matter of equity. And that's why the state has to step up and do this, because we should not be relying upon private sector providers like Jenna's Promise or the Divided Sky Foundation, because the folks that need those treatments simply are not going to have access to those facilities. So that's my ask there. The second part of this is, as we've heard, we have a number of folks that are out there struggling who have made it clear that they're not interested in the services or they have exhausted the services. And as we've also heard, there's a pretty significant overlap with those folks who are the ones that are engaging, in these kinds of behaviors that infringe on the rights of others and cause harm to the communities. And that's a major issue for folks who live and work in the downtown core. And that's an issue for which we don't really seem to have a good solution. And that was kind of, again, the thought about, we need to find a way to take these people off the street so that they're not causing harm to other people. But we got to do it in a way that doesn't result in them coming out on the other side as a criminal, which is only going to further stigmatize them and make it more difficult for them to integrate back into society. So that's why we wanted to, make it clear that the legislature needs to get involved with this. So unless there are any further comments, I'm thinking we'll just go to the vote on the actual resolution itself.
You didn't vote on the.
Thank you, Lee.
Can I just sum it up in
Yes,
15
absolutely.
seconds or less?
So to remind everybody what we're voting on, we are voting to completely strike and not replace lines 33, 34, 35, which calls upon the state legislature to establish compulsory compassionate care, which would be involuntary, whatever, hospitalization, incarceration, based on my reasoning is based on the research that this involuntary abstinence has been proven time and time again to increase death. These folks don't deserve to die.
All right, so we'll move into a vote on the resolution as introduced, as all the amendments have failed. So all those.
We didn't vote on her.
We didn't vote on that.
It's late and I have little sleep, so thank you all for keeping the train on the track. And there. All right, so all those in favor of Lee Morgan's amendment to just outright strike lines 33, 34, and 35, which would mean by striking it, they'd be outright deleted. Say aye. Everybody raise hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed. Oh, wait, let's see.
I got it. I counted.
I is 6.
Are we back on day now?
Wait, whoa. Let's start. All those in favor of Lee's amendment to strike lines 33, 34, and 35, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Are you seeing Charlie?
I see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I see that. All right.
Hands up and keep.
Like you're in class and
All right. I see 6. I see 6 now. Okay, we got 6. All those opposed.
Daryl.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion ties, so the amendment does not pass. So it's a 6-6 tie. All right. So now, and feel free to step in if I'm, need some guidance here. Okay. I think now we're going to actually vote on the actual amendment itself as written. I think we've had
The whole resolution.
the whole resolution.
We
Sorry,
need a new word besides amendment.
saying amendment line. Yeah, so unless there's any further discussion and pin the period, that there is none, we'll call the question on that and a vote. So all those in favor of the amendment as introduced.
Resolution, Chris.
Resolution.
Sorry, it's late. I've had little
You
sleep.
want to vote on this
All
whole
those in favor
thing,
of
front and back?
Resolution as introduced, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? 1, 2, 3. All right. If you wrote in favor, we got to get the count. I'm sorry. Favor. 2,
You're
3.
agreeing, yes. You're saying yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then opposed again. 1, 2, 3. All right. All right. Well, thanks everyone for this. I think it's been a good deliberative process. All right. Yeah. So I just want to say that in my view, I've done this for a while. This is exactly what an NPA should be. This is, coming out. We've had a very civil exchange of ideas.
Well, they gotta point it out.
Okay. Relatively civil exchange of ideas for the most part, with one exception. But this is what the NPA is for us to come together as a community, talk, exchange diverse viewpoints and share our opinions. I'm very glad that everyone had a chance to come out tonight. So with that, I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everyone.